Thank you, Sokyo, for the introduction and for everything you've done, you and Gakyo, to put this platform together. Yeah, just a few introductory remarks. With respect to the session, I just wanted to say this is a dialogue not only between me and Shoun, but with us and you. I'd like to have it be very interactive and see if you have any questions or comments. We can have it be that way. So Shoun and I will start off, dialoguing with each other and some questions that come to us. Sokyo, thank you for not putting a number on a very long time. Indeed, it has been a very long time that Shoun and I have been practicing with each other. So yeah, we'll kind of start that way, and we can get into more questions. Um, the the impetus. I just wanted to say a few things about the impetus for this One Body Sangha. It was it came to me that with people being remote and fragmented, that there was a real need and desire for people to connect more in Sangha that they weren't necessarily able to do, especially if they didn't have a sitting group or a teacher nearby. Just a really big need for that. And at the same time, there were maybe some higher barriers to entry in some of the more formal groups that were available. So I thought to create a more accessible entry point for people to practice together in Sangha, that didn't necessarily have a strong, dogmatic focus at all, but just was good, strong, solid practice informed by the Zen tradition. And I put that to Sokyo and Gakyo as a question, like what do you think? Is there something you can do? And they took it way beyond what I had envisioned. It's so rich and full and beautiful, and the possibilities that are emerging, from their platform is just more than I even envisioned. So yeah, I'm really encouraged that it's gotten off to such a great start, and I suspect it'll grow. Sokyo mentioned about this kind of visualizing us all together, and one thing I did want to say is that um, Zen and meditation and all spiritual practice is embodied. It's embodied, and one of the risks of our virtualization of our meditation practice is that we lose that embodiment a little bit, and we do get pulled into the screens. So we're on a knife's edge with something like this, where we want to take advantage of the fact that we actually can connect over space like this, but it's really important not to lose our own embodiment while we're doing it. So right now in this session, maintain your breath, your body awareness, while you're visualizing, being by the lake or being together in the same room. I mean, spiritual practice requires this bifocal vision, actually, always, to maintain a bigger picture and an intimate picture at the same time. We actually say the absolute and the relative, the oneness and the diversity and the relativity at the same time. So this is an opportunity to practice that. Stay embodied. Don't get pulled into the screen with your entire consciousness, right? Stay embodied, but also connect with us through the screen. I hope that was helpful. I don't know if that was too weird or whatever.
Not weird at all. And if I could sort of add on there to that, a little over 5 years ago, all kinds of organizations, not just Zen groups, but had to embrace this technology, this way of connecting. We didn't have a choice. And some groups were already set up that way a bit, and others started from scratch. And it's been, I think, a bit of a learning curve or a getting comfortable curve for people. And I still hear from people sometimes who say they don't like it. And of course we all like to be physically in the same space. There's no argument there. But I've heard people say, meeting this way or doing meditation or having a talk or something on Zoom, I don't get as much out of it as I do when I'm in person. And in one of these conversations, I found myself saying, well, perhaps turn that around and think about, rather than what you're getting out of it, what can you give to this? Um, and and it changes it changes it immeasurably, at least for me. When you think about, with each of you, now we don't have 100 people on the Zoom, so it's much more approachable. But I can look at each of you distinctly and see your smile and see your eyes and see the space you're in and things like that, and and kind of give it into the Zoom rather than worry about what I'm getting out of it. So I think it's been a real, again, my experience only, it's been a real benefit to be able to meet this way. And I know locally with Eon Zen Center, we sit every day. We sit about online. We sit about 12 hours a week. And we weren't doing that before, so it's really helped us expand. And Anne knows, to be sure, with Zen Peacemakers, we started a morning sitting weekdays over 5 years ago. That's still going. Some of the same people are still in that group, so it's been a real benefit. Yeah.
All right, Showen. Let's
Yeah.
get going. What, what brought you to Zen and what brings you back now?
What brought me to it? That's really a good question, and that's probably without trying to sound grandiose, but there's probably a really deep answer to that I may or may not even be aware of. And but on the tangible level of things, like a lot of kids in high school in the '60s, more than a few of us, people I knew, were reading Houston Smith and Paramahansa Yogananda, reading Alan Watts, and getting interested in uh, wisdom traditions, let's say, and uh, and but it was very obscure at the time too, and uh, I didn't have any way to get directly in touch with teachers or a practice center in the place that I lived. Later on, I had the opportunity to do that, but there were three books that came right around 1970, 71 that just uh, made things explode for me and I think for a lot of other people as well. The Three Pillars of Zen was a revelation. It was because it wasn't theoretical or it wasn't about, it was practical. It was here's what you can do and here's what this practice looks like. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, the same. It was just a different kind of spiritual book than we'd been, used to seeing, and it remains, top shelf to today. And then Ram Dass's Be Here Now really affected so many people. So before I had any in-person connection, um, those things really influenced me. In 1972, I was in college in Bellingham, Washington, and I joined a yoga group, and then it wasn't just the physical part of yoga, but all eight limbs of the yoga system, including meditation and breathing exercises and all that. So that was my first real practical exposure. And then in 1975, I visited Zen Center of Los Angeles for an introduction. Uh, uh, and things went from there. I won't do the whole history, but that's that that's those were the touch points and the influences. And I think I should keep this shorter than this. There's certainly a personal part of it, um, but there was a cultural part too. I mean, it was happening in the culture, and I was ripe for that. I think. Uh, Even though it was happening in the culture, not everybody was affected or was drawn into doing Zen practice. But I was. At one point, somebody asked me this question: "Is why, wh as you did, what got you, why did you get into this?" And I had to think. Well, I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, And when you go to Catholic school, you go to Mass Monday through Friday, and then you go on Sundays. So 6 days a week, I was sitting on a cold, hard bench, and there was this scary guy in robes chanting in a different language with a chalice with burning incense. And there were candles, and it was dark and kind of mysterious and stuff. And I thought, well, maybe that was it. I don't know. How about you, Ghetto?
Yeah, I also was raised Catholic, as most of you know, and but I didn't get something from that, which I did find in the Buddhist tradition. But yeah, to give a frame of reference that I've come to see, the context that I've come to learn through my years of practice, and then with my Dharma brothers and sisters who practice with me, and now with students over the years, I've come to see that there's two main strains that bring people to practice, learning and healing. I would put it that way. So it's like the wisdom side and the compassion side, learning and healing. And healing includes holing. Healing and holing are the same to me. So we can have healing from like emotional wounds and relational wounds and things like that. But ultimately, we recognize that there's a separation from the divine, separation from source. So that's the primary holing, that we are practicing, awakening from, awakening from the illusion of separation is that holing. So that awakening, holing is in that healing side. And then there's the wisdom and learning side. So that's just to give, I wasn't able to articulate this, for many years, but now I have that understanding. So going back to, in retrospect, understanding what brought me to practice, I would say it was initially the learning side. Reading early texts about what Buddhism was about, what Zen was about, being exposed to it in high school, pulling a book down from the library in high school. In fact, it was handed to me by a friend, and it was these all of these sayings from Eastern traditions. And I opened it up and I read, "Does a dog have a monk asked Master Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature?" Joshu answered, "Moo." And I said, "What? This is a book on religion? What the heck?" I was raised in the Catholic tradition, and it really, like, I started laughing. I was intrigued. And I was really sparked by that. I then, I studied a little bit in college, and I started meditating as a senior in college, and then I started getting more and more into it. And it was mostly the learning side, the intriguing side of it that was bringing me to that. I had a path through Tai Chi. I practiced Tai Chi seriously for several years. I went to live in China for a year, and I practiced it there, and kept coming back into the country. I, really discovered sitting meditation. It just became much more alive to me. So I entered the path that way. But coincident with that was actually then touching into my own, say, woundedness, my own pain, my separation, my confusion, my depression. So that part of it was the main part that really got me into a serious practice. That you could say there's the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot is the learning, and the stick is you're in so much pain and confusion that you need to do something about it. So that then became real driver and motivator for me to become a resident at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, and to take the Buddhist vows, and to really enter into a path. So I think I found it. I'm interested to hear maybe where other people are too, later on in the session. But those two strains are kind of, they're quasi separate in a way, and it might be good for people to, I think, reflect on what is motivating them, how much of it is the healing side and how much of it is the learning side. They're both great, because wisdom and compassion are both the fruits of this endeavor, and they themselves are related. We say wisdom. Let's see, wisdom is the substance of compassion, and compassion is the functioning of wisdom. So they're intimately related, but their expressions are different. So if you understand what's motivating you with respect to those strands, then you can develop your own relationship with your own practice, right? Oh, well, this is what I need right now, and do I need a teacher right now, or do I not need a teacher right now, or do I need a certain type of help or a certain type of teacher? These are good things for you to reflect on yourself. So nowadays, I asked you what brings you back now, and I would say it's those two things, and they've become one for me. Learning and healing and holding are one. It's a unified practice, and I'm still learning, and I'm still healing, and I'm still holding. So that's what brings me back every day.
Uh, I don't want this question to sound cheeky. It's a sincere question. You referred to, depression and, mental or emotional upset and you know, things like that years ago. Have they healed? Have they hold?
Have they persisted?
Have they healed? Have you been able to heal those?
Oh, healed. I thought you said
Healed, yes.
yield. Yield. Have they yielded anything?
No.
Like, oh, that's an interesting question.
Have they healed or hold, or are they still there
Yeah.
and you just have a different relationship with them?
Um, yes and yes. Yeah. Yes, they've healed, and yes, they return. But it's the relationship that's very, very, very different. There's now what I used to experience as almost my baseline condition, which could last for months and years even, now are just occasional state conditions that come in. So it would be something like a depressive condition I might experience for like a few hours or maybe a couple of days
Mhm.
because I'm extremely tuned into what's going on physiologically and I'm not adding anything extra. And so it passes relatively quickly. Um, and that shift, not identifying with the condition, adding resistances, adding ideas, adding, self-medication techniques,
Yeah, yeah.
alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is. Those are the things that keep it persisting, right? So, yeah, it's a completely different relationship to my experience.
I think uh, I think sometimes among folks there's a notion that we're going to get fixed,
Yeah, yeah.
and that whatever it is that troubles us or plagues us is somehow going to be wiped away. We're going to we'll take that angelic shower and come away clean of all those things. And I think people will be disappointed if that's an expectation. But I love what you said about those states come, but they just they don't linger like they used to. And it's for me, uh, it's almost comical sometimes to watch myself go through a reaction like that. It happened just the other day. Something was up, and I had kind of a sulky mood come over me, and Sandy called me on it and said, you realize you're kind of doing this thing right now, and I was able to just look at it and and chuckle and go, yeah, I know, I know, this foolish old man, but and there it goes, and there it goes. So that alone is, you asked earlier, what keeps me doing this?
Yeah,
That is one of the things that keeps me doing this,
yeah,
is it's practical. It works.
yeah. Does it get better and better?
Yes,
Mm.
I think so. Is my experience. I can't speak for anybody else, but my experience is that it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find yourself getting, wiser and wiser and deeper and happier? Or is it more,
I don't think I'm very wise to begin with, so no. Deeper perhaps, but not. And it's funny. Uh, I'm not unhappy, but I don't walk around in a in a blissful, happy state of mind. Uh, you know, somebody asked me, are you happy? And I said, I don't really don't know. I really don't know.
yeah.
And but maybe the thing that's changed is uh, I don't need to know, and it doesn't really matter to me anymore if I'm happy or not.
That really resonated with me, Shoun. I think I was asking myself that question as I was asking you, and I really loved your answer. Yeah, I think we there's an idea about happiness, and which is not the actual experience of happiness. You know, we think that things are going to make us happy that are not, just because of the law of impermanence, you know. So even if we do get the thing that we think is going to make us happy and it does make us happy, it's only for a very short period of time. And,
Yeah,
and then that changes. And then, so there's that fundamental truth of Buddhism, which is very essential, right, to kind of tune into. And I've become very, you know, very content with being happy and unhappy, you know, feeling connected and disconnected, misunderstood, you know, just to accept whatever it is that's arising, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so often, I don't want to turn this into a cultural commentary, but
Mm.
but our culture does influence us, doesn't it, to gauge happiness by externals.
Yeah.
You know, you know, because we're so oriented towards consumption and acquisition and so forth, and sometimes worse, power and things like that. But very often we measure our happiness in terms of did I get to play golf today, or how much money do I have in the bank, or or my car, or my house, or my vacation, or whatever it might be. And this is really different than that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
you know, what just kind of riffing, you know, on this, it's come to me how and this relates to the one body sangha here, how, you know, connection is really the great balm. Um, Also, it's the truth, right? That we are one body and we are connected. So there's both the insight side of that is, oh, we actually are, and then there's the feeling side of it to actually feel. And when we don't see ourselves as being connected, or we don't feel ourselves as being connected, it's the biggest wound. It's the biggest pain, right? Feeling rejected is so painful. Feeling disconnected is so painful. And you know, a very close family member is going through recovery from, you know, a substance dependency, and I'm learning something about that. Some of you, you know much more about that than I do. But one of the things that, you know, opposite of, or the antidote to addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And that was like, boy, a light went off for me, because we really, you could look at, you know, core Buddhist understanding of attachment and how that produces suffering as kind of being addictions, right? The toxins of greed, hatred, and ignorance are things that we actually we reinforce, and we, you know, support and engage with those tendencies as toxins. So what's the antidote to that? Well, it's connection. It's one
mhm.
body. It's really connecting with others. But we don't always feel that way. I mean, look at all the disconnection we have. I mean, do we feel connected to, you know, people who are doing, you know, horrible things right now in the world? You know, disconnection is a part of life. It is an absolute, you know, essential to being human. So the way I see, you know, my practice is to be as comfortable and as be as non-reactive with disconnection
Mm,
as I am, you know, with connection. So, and that means feeling the pain of disconnection, feeling the pain of separation, feeling the pain of heartbreak, feeling the pain of violence, you know, that's perpetrated, you know, whether to myself or to loved ones or to others in the world, to have to really be present, you know, with all of that.
mm. What that really underscores is that this practice, again, back to what we said earlier, it's not about fixing us or improving us necessarily, um, but being comfortable being a human being. And as human beings, we come along with all kinds of messy stuff. And for myself, sometimes I just don't want that. I don't want to feel that stuff. But that's the practice. There it is. It's right in front of me, right then. I'm feeling upset. I'm feeling anxious. My ego got bruised because somebody said something, in a conversation that hurt my feelings, and there it is. There it is. There it is.
Mhm. So Shoun, we have a lot of civic unrest, percolating now. You're the president of Zen Peacemakers International. What's your take on it all?
That's a big question. Well, the first thing, Kyoto, that comes up, and this comes from what we were just talking about, is that I am deeply, deeply sad. Um, this is not it's not, it's not a unique time in world history by any means. I think, were we talking recently about? I've forgotten where it came up. Where we said, well, the Tang Dynasty, where all of these so many of these great koans come from, was a very tumultuous time in Chinese history, and millions of people were killed. And I think as a Chan practitioner, you might even have had to hide during part of that time. So, um, but that's not where we are. Where we are is in this world today, and it's a lot. Um, it's a lot that's going on, and I won't make a list. Everyone knows, and we added to the list Friday morning when Israel bombed Iran, and we added to the list this morning when someone murdered a couple of people in Minneapolis. And who knows what today's going to bring? I'm on the edge of my seat, really. Um, so that makes me sad. It makes me sad. That's the first thing. Um, my my real interest is how do we practice with this? Um, and that's a big question. That's a big question. Uh, uh, and and as knows this really well because we're in some of the same events and classes and so forth together. But in Zen Peacemakers, we refer to the three tenets. They're foundational for Zen Peacemakers, and frankly, I think they're foundational for our practice more broadly. And those are not knowing. So this is the mind of meditation, the mind of letting things be as they are without commentary or categorization or preference or aversion. Bearing witness, which really means with that mind of that empty mind and soft heart, looking at the world as it is and not turning away from it. And that's a very heavy lift. And then the third one is from those two practices, from that position, listen to your heart and it will tell you what to do and stand up and go do something to relieve suffering. So that's maybe that sounds obscure. For me on a daily basis, it really means as hard as it is to look at as a participant, as a human being on this earth. Uh, I want to bear witness to what's going on. I need to take care of myself and not dwell in it so much that I become, uh, that it makes it's toxic to me. But I need to practice not looking away, not looking away, and uh, and then the taking action part um, can take a number of different forms. And I'd like to think that some of what we do in Zen Peacemakers through trainings and coming together in groups and things like that, and talking about some of these things is helpful. But it's hard to know this. I'm not sure if I got to your question there, but
Yeah, that was a beautiful answer. I feel exactly the same way. Yeah, and I'm liking what Anne put in to the chat. Eve talking about Bernie Glassman saying Bernie knew life was disorderly and he was trying to practice with it, not trying to control it. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of the definitely the sense that I take to heart in working with the times, the discord
yeah,
and the violence and such in the times. And I'll say to add to what you said, because the three tenets are kind of how I approach these things. Is my practice I feel has allowed me to simplify on this, and I notice that I'm drawn to try to fix things in my mind, right? What's going on? What's motivating people? What's their strategy? What's their objective, right? And it becomes very conceptual, very much a mental process of like organizing, understanding, clear seeing, of course, but but when I'm honest with myself, I realize there's kind of a judging that's underneath that. Who's the bad guy? Who's to blame for this? Why is why are they doing that? And how do we stop them from doing that?
right.
It's really right in there, sometimes at a unconscious or not fully acknowledged level. And I don't want to feed that because it can go forever. I mean, it can go to, me taking up arms and doing something completely ridiculous, telling
Hmm.
myself that, you know, I mean, that's what I see people doing. They're telling themselves that this act of violence is somehow serving, their cause in some way. So there's this escalated reactivity, that's playing out. And I notice that in myself too. But what my practice has given me is at least a recognition that the way I feel the way is when I'm really simple about it, to be embodied, to be close, to be intimate with my own
Hmm.
feelings about what's going on without judging. Or at least not getting, I can recognize my judgments when they come up, but not getting caught up there, but to return to, my body, my life, my intimate relationships. So in this way, having three teenagers that I'm raising, the I'm forced. That's the most important thing, right? Is to maintain the safety and the well-being of the family. So, and that is the most important thing, to maintain the safety and well-being of those who are right around us in our near term. Now, from there, we can extend out, obviously, but that keeps me kind of close and intimate in what's doing. And then from there, it's like, well, what can I do? What can I
Yeah,
do in this situation? I can write a letter. I could put a newsletter out. I can go to the protest downtown Boulder in 20 minutes. There are things I can do, but the mind can become very grandiose, very judgmental, very grandiose. That's
yeah,
what it tends to do. And that way produces, I believe, a distorting kind of effect. And that really, frankly, I think that's what everybody's doing is this grandiosity of what's right and what's wrong. But to be intimate and close and just do the simple right thing, um, my practice has given me some access to that. Oh, the simple right thing here is just to do this right now. Um, so that's how it is
yeah,
for me right now. Not that I don't get confused and I don't ask myself, but when it's a simple thing, oh, just do this. It's like the resonance opens up. Oh, that's what I need to do.
yeah, yeah. We mentioned Zen peacemakers, and uh, at its core, there's an element of what the Zen peacemakers approach is utterly revolutionary and unique, and confounding, and that is through that not knowing and bearing witness and looking at the world the way that it is. uh, and not having judgments about it one way or another, to remain this sounds like a mouthful, but to remain non-positional, yet still take action. And I've had hundreds of conversations with people who really want to oppose that idea. No, you should take a position. I mean, these guys are clearly bad, so we need to oppose them.
Mm.
Um, and I think, Yodo, as you referred to, I think my mind at least goes there. It goes into a binary kind of a mode where if it's not this, then it's this, and if it's this, it's not that. And and we've all heard the, silence is complicity thing. Well, is it? Maybe it's not. Maybe silence is not complicity. Who
Mhm.
said so?
Mhm.
Who
Mhm.
said so? And and so uh, uh, the real challenge with that kind of approach to the world is to be active, to be socially engaged, to take action, to try to relieve suffering without being positional, without opposing or othering someone or judging someone, the bad guys. And boy, it's real easy. I mean, the bad guys, they even wear black hats now, so they're easy to spot, or some other color. Um, so it's a lifelong practice to work with that. And um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's subtle, isn't it? It feels good to take a position and to defend the position.
doesn't it? Yeah, it's like scratching an itch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to get some questions from the group, but I'd love to get a question that you ask to both me and Showen, and we give you wildly different answers to it. So if anyone has any provocative questions
Okay,
or
I
simple
put a,
questions. What's
Dan
that?
put a question in the chat just based
Oh,
on what you were just talking about. That might be a nice place to start, and then we can go from there.
yeah.
We've got about 15,
Showen,
20
you want to
minutes.
take the first shot at that?
Oh, you say there is a question in the chat. Can you judge the action, not the person? Are there wrong actions that we need to take a stand on? Well, there's a provocative question, Anne. Thank you. Um, my first thought, my first reaction to that was, uh, do we do we need to judge the action? Is it accretive or is it additive or is it helpful or beneficial to judge it, or 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 are we left with what can I do? What can I do? We talk a lot about, and we're going to have in a few weeks, we're going to have a forum with Palestinian and Israeli people talking about, Gaza you know, the conflict and so forth. Um, and, and that situation is, people really want you to take a position. Um, and it always occurs to me the position I want to take is let's get water and food to the people who are hungry and starving, and let's get medical care to those people and take care of them. And I don't know that kind of action needs a judgment. You know what I mean? I don't. I hope you don't think I'm dodging your question. Maybe maybe Gyodo, you have a.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. Great question, Anne. I guess the entree in I would say is I make a distinction between taking a stand and taking a position. And I notice you said take a stand in your question, so maybe you do too. I got this from Lynn Twist, who's a wonderful kind of spiritual teacher in the realm of financial management. She has a book called The Soul of Money, which is really great. But she articulated this. Maybe somebody else did before that, but that's where I got it from her. So the difference between defending a position, right? You're right about this territory and I'm going to defend it, versus I'm just taking a stand for my truth or what I believe to be true and important. And that's what I heard in what Shoun said. I'm going to take a position in favor of, getting food to starving people. That's almost like a stand, I would say. That's
Yeah.
a stand. So then we get into this, like the judgment, and I would say, so we judge, it's important to recognize that we do judge, but I think it's important to expand the context of that judgment and to recognize that it's all provisional. I want to look at all my judgments as being provisional, right? They're based on this time, this place, this situation, my own opinion, right? So with all of those things being contextual parts of it, I would just say, well, this is how I feel about this, given all of these contingencies. So all of my judgments, I want to say, are just provisional judgments. And then I'll acknowledge that and I say, okay, I'm acknowledging my provisional judgments, but I'm not saying that that's the final judgment in any way. It's not an absolute. It's not my absolute judgment, and it isn't certainly God's absolute judgment. It's just a provisional. And then, with respect to that, which is my understanding and my belief and my values, I'm going to take a stand in some way or another. That's how I approach that. I don't know if that helped. Let's see. If you don't take a position, then are you complicit? I don't think so. I think that relates to what Shoun said about, silence doesn't have to be complicity. You said if you don't take a position, yeah, are you positioned? No, I think what I shared, I hope was addressive to that. But yeah, if you have any follow-ups, okay, thanks. Thumbs up.
Anybody else? So,
So
so
Kim,
Yeah, thank you for this discussion. And I think it's really subtle too, this dimension of complicity and apathy and uh, openness and non-judgment. And I guess I wanted to ask about part of how I experience that is that it has to do with the mind of how I'm meeting the situation, which can totally change the situation. So if I'm meeting the situation with a mind of judgment and and badness, that kind of attitude, then I'm co-creating more suffering potentially, But if I'm meeting it with a mind of, really more from the heart of the sadness of it and what is needed and how do I take care of this situation? That's a very different attitude. And it feels similar to how I meet my own mind when I have aggressive self thoughts, the self critic. If I meet that with bad resist, right, it actually just perpetuates the suffering. But if I meet it with, oh, right now it's like this, I'm not turning away from it, but something softens. So I guess from a practice standpoint, I'd love to hear both of you and that experience of how we co-create everything. Whatever's happening, we're actually a participant in co-creating that, depending on how we're meeting it with our mind. And I don't know if maybe it's just a question of hearing that more broadly, because to me that aspect of co-creation feels really relevant to this thing. If I'm meeting force with force, then I'm actually increasing suffering.
yeah. I'll take that first. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
great question, Sokyo, and a great I think you're right. I know you're right that the mind that we meet it, can actually perpetuate it. With respect to the current situation, you know, um, so we have a textbook narcissist who's got, the reins of power, right? So, this mindset wants drama, wants conflict. They thrive on conflict and drama, and authoritarian systems around the world do that as well. Actually creating the problems that they then say they're the solution to with further aggressions and further abuses. So they want you to fight. They want you to be in conflict. That is what, and any of you who've interacted with a real narcissist, a kind of a textbook narcissist, we all have narcissistic tendencies for sure. but a real locked in kind of NPD sort of person, which I believe our leader is, knows this, right? It's like everything is weaponized. Every sort of part of the interaction
Yeah.
is weaponized in terms of a drama that then, ultimately serves their purposes if they can turn it that way. So the two things that I think subvert, that dynamic are, one, ignoring the person. Okay. That's the worst thing for a narcissist, is to not give them any attention. Okay. So that actually goes to like Shoun's kind of, sometimes silence is actually just keeping fuel from that fire. But we have somebody who's got the levers of power, and that we can't just necessarily do that. So I think the other thing that I think works really well is humor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's not that confrontational energy that you were talking about, Sokyo. It's Bernie's, put on the red nose and make fun of this whole effing situation, and really, and that's true too. I mean, the universe is laughing all the time, all the time at all of this. And if we can touch into that and tap into that, I feel that can be really, really powerful, actually, really serve, in a healing capacity. So those are some thoughts in that direction, Sokyo. But Shoun, how about you?
Well, I'm not sure what I'm going to say is going to relate directly, but I want to toss it in. Um, the taking action part is not qualified. It's not parameterized, and it's not specified. And it could look it can look all kinds of different ways, and it doesn't have to be consistent. Uh, what I might do in one situation, I might not do another time in a similar situation. I might do something differently. Um, and it doesn't respond to any code necessarily. I think this story is true. I've heard it enough times. Apparently, I think before either of us were at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, there was a discussion, and somebody asked Maizumi Roshi about the death penalty. Is it ever appropriate? And we all expect, what the right answer should be coming from a Roshi. And he said sometimes,
Mm, mm,
and and I think it really messed people up.
mhm,
And, when I was a precocious kid, so when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, I was reading Gandhi, and I fancied myself a pacifist. I wrote about this somewhere recently. Um, uh, and I never had to test that. I
mm.
never had to test that. I in the Vietnam draft lottery, I drew number 328. So I got away scot-free. I didn't have to go to Canada. I didn't have to go to jail, and because I thought I was a pacifist, um, until my son was born in 1980, and in a split second, I had a full body uh, experience or feeling of that. If anybody comes from my son or my family, and if it goes to this extent, if it's this extreme, I will kill them. And and that's still the truth. Still the truth. So, um, that range of how we might take action, uh, I think is unbounded, undescribed. I don't know if that's off topic or useful, but
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. We have a few minutes left. We have two other questions in the chat. Lisa, I was wondering if you could speak your question. I'm just having trouble computing through the reading, so maybe you could. Yeah.
I well, I have a family, like my husband's family mostly, but where we were talking about taking a stand or judging, and I had a conversation with a cousin, a distant cousin, about and they've they voted for they voted for this. They don't know that they voted for this.
Mm,
And we were talking about why, and it was related to our children. So I'm just going to say it, I have a daughter who's trans, and she had a and she had the same thing happen. But we were talking and she said, how is it so seamless? And it was not seamless, but and I was like, well, what happened? And she just kept talking about fear. I'm so afraid. So we tried to basically stop it. I'm so afraid that we like tried to go to doctor. I'm so afraid that I made all these decisions to try to protect and keep everything that I knew that was safe. So when we talk about like, and then I have other family members who are like, they were like very afraid because I'm literally gonna go to the Longmont protest, and they were afraid that like we're gonna hunker down because we heard all these horrible things about people going out in the streets. And I was like, I better not tell them. And I'm so afraid, and that's why I made this choice, because I'm so afraid of like things that are not real, that haven't come here. So I'm making up stories in my head, but they're driving really self-destructive or putting themselves in positions of pain because they're letting like fear just run the story. I think it's a very vague question. I just don't know what to do with that. It's just come up recently.
Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe there's no answer. I don't know.
I think it's a really important and sensitive recognition that fear drives us a lot. You know, ourselves, we should recognize when it's driving us, and you know how it might be driving others, so we can see what they're afraid of, and what we're afraid of, and to be motivated. You know, we can be motivated with a protection instinct, but ultimately there's love, you know, and caring at the heart of that. So for us to connect with it. Now, you know, going back to what I said before, there's institutions and people and collectives that are, you know, dedicated to weaponizing fear, to fomenting fear. So that's important to recognize that, because you don't want to become the thing that they're creating fear around, right? You don't want to feed that. We have the first paramita, the virtues of the bodhisattva, is called dana, generosity, and we say that's the primary virtue from which all the other virtues arise, is generosity. And we say the some people say the best gift you can give, the most generous, is the gift of no fear. That allows someone, you know, gives them access to their own humanity, you know, their own caringness, their own love. So yeah, I think, Lisa, that's an important thing that you're pointing to. Maybe we can have Gakyo had a question. Would you like to ask it?
Sure. I what brought this up, first of all, is that between Gyodo and Shoun, one of you had mentioned in a talk and the other one had referred to it afterwards about in silence all questions are answered. And I started thinking about how our actions usually seem to be kind of like an answer to a question. And so much of the practice is not the actions that we take, but how we sit with a question. And I'm wondering how, if you see that applying to what we're talking about with politics and othering, and how we act without fear, but do not act just based on what we think is right, in a way that other people have other things they think something is right and take action.
Darren, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to comment on that, other than, you know, what I think what you're describing is that not knowing, isn't it? It's you know, that's the place where stillness answers every question, in that place of not knowing. Yeah.
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think what I said was in the silence, all questions are resolved, not necessarily answered. So I do make a distinction there. But I think your sense was maybe that way too, resolved. And I would say, yeah, I like that framing, that the action itself is the answering or the resolution of one question. And I think it's also the asking of another, right? Who's with me? Who believes the way I do? who, in with respect to say protest, right? How are you going to respond to this? What do we stand for? There's a lot of questions in that action as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the not knowing and bearing witness together with the loving action. None of those ever end.
And I would add on too, and I like the action reference as well. If we include doing nothing as action,
Mm. Hmm.
which I think, is another choice, and I think it is an action. It is an action.
So, and could you say, I mean, doing nothing isn't doing nothing.
Doing nothing is not doing
If
nothing.
you're doing it with a certain spirit, right? I mean,
Exactly.
if you think of it that way, I'm not going to do anything about this, then you are doing nothing, right? But if your spirit is, I'm actually going to sit here and hold this in my heart and engage differently than something active in my physical body, you're not doing nothing.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fully engaged in being here.
Yeah, we have a koan in Zen, which is, what was Bodhidharma doing when he was facing the wall for 6 years? And it's not, he wasn't doing nothing. We actually say he was spreading the Dharma.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I think maybe we're at time,
I
Sokyo.
think we are. Yeah. Thanks everybody for questions and
Yeah,
your
thank you.
attention. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I love where it went and the depth and breadth that we found ourselves in it, and that we kind of co-created this, it feels like, as well. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to Gyodo Sensei and to Geoff Shoun for joining.